Hi, everybody. It's Andrea with Sweet Unspicy. I'm here with my co-host, Miss Carolina Rush, but she is not here. It's weird. I'm in the studio by myself, Carolina, because you're at home because you have COVID. Damn,
yeah,
COVID.
It sucks. It's been a rough week. I missed your birthday.
I know. You missed everything.
And I missed being in the studio.
We did go to lunch, though, for my birthday, so that was nice.
Thank God. And remember, I even told you at lunch, I was like, I'm not feeling right. Mm-hmm. Something feels off.
Yeah, and I didn't get it. So.
Well, that's because your immune system, I mean, a prime IV, come on, your immune system's like rock solid.
I hope so. I mean, I have my moments, but
mine.
It's pretty good. We're so going to work on yours.
Janine, this is my 8th time getting COVID. Number 8.
Insane.
Yeah.
Well, our subject today, do you want to say what we're talking about, Carolina?
Well, you had actually turned me on to this new series trending on TikTok called Who the Fuck Did I Marry?
So
and
engrossing.
It's about this woman that meets this man that is a pathological liar and a complete narcissist, and there was like 50 parts to, I mean, I thank God I had COVID this week because it is the only way that I was able, I mean, I had that to entertain me. I listened for like 3 days.
Yeah, it's like 8 hours if you listen on regular speed.
Yeah, so I didn't know how to change the speed. So I had to listen. It was like 10-minute clips. Mm-hmm. And so crazy story. I like from the beginning, I was like addicted. Like it was insane. And so it's trending on TikTok. Everybody's talking about it. Then I saw other videos that other people are posting about it. And then I saw the actual guy posting his own videos afterwards.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
Oh, you didn't see those? Yeah. He came to try to defend himself.
Of course. Legion is what she called him.
So it was pretty crazy. It was crazy watching it. It was triggering. You and I have been wanting to have this show on narcissism for a while now. So this was like a great catalyst for that.
So I know not everybody out there's watched the crazy 8 hours like you and I did. So let's just recap it real quick. So basically this woman met this guy online and it was like right before COVID. It was early March, right before COVID. So they were dating, COVID hits, they decide to quarantine together at her place because he was running a studio and he had a whole reason why, and he was going to buy a house and told her he had money to buy a house, all of this stuff. And so they ended up living together. She gets pregnant. He keeps telling her they literally put offers in to buy houses, and then he always has an excuse as to why he can't go forward with it, and she doesn't understand what's going on. And like not just $300,000 or $400,000 houses, like $700,000 houses, like, and he had in a story he was a former arena football player, like just on and on. And of course,
but he had paperwork. He had paperwork to back up.
Well, he had screenshots from the internet, right. But she thought it was paperwork. Yeah. And
right.
You know, she was super sweet. Like, you and I have talked a little bit about this before, and the thing that got me was she was saying, like, I just wanted it to be my turn. I was like, oh, maybe she thought maybe it's my turn to find that person. And she said it was really nice because he was paying some household bills and, like, she wasn't having to worry about the bills. And she said that was nice, you know. And you have so much empathy for her because people, of course, online, people are trolls and came at her of like, you're so dumb and all this stuff. And I just think she wanted it so bad. And she admitted later, she was like at the end when she found out everything was just fake. Like he has a twin brother, kind of had stolen some of the things about his twin brother and taken them on as his persona. Like he'd said he was a regional manager for this company in Atlanta. His brother was a regional manager. Like everything he was saying about himself ended up being a lot about his twin brother who lived in another state and city. But she found all this out later, and she had a miscarriage. They didn't have the baby. And she said later, she's like, God kept putting signs in my path that this was not my man. And she goes, I kept ignoring him. So she but hindsight is really easy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
But it is.
And I feel like with everything that you just said, we haven't done it justice. The story is insane from start to finish, the things that this woman went through, the things that this guy did to her. I mean, it made up people's deaths and made up relatives, and they were out shopping for BMWs, and the way that they met was online.
Carolina's most hated way of meeting somebody ever.
See, I'm telling you, stay away from it.
It doesn't mean it doesn't work.
I know, but there's more horror stories than not, I think. So anyway,
I knew you were going to say that.
They were going to go meet at the Cheesecake Factory. They had a great conversation on the phone. They were going to meet. Her tire blew out on the way there. And so she called him, and he went. And not only did he change her tire, but he also followed her to the nearest tire store and paid for her new tire on the first date. So this is classic grooming. He knew exactly what he was doing from the beginning. I mean, what woman wouldn't be swept off her feet if some guy that she just met was like doing all this for her on the first date? So he started then. That's when it started.
Yeah. I mean, he did some nice things. Like I said, he was paying some bills when they had moved in together. He took the financial pressure off from the beginning. He did buy her a ring at some point. Like literally took her to the store, said, which one do you like? And ended up buying her that ring.
But you do understand, this wasn't him being nice.
100%.
Okay, this was him grooming her and like, I'm going to give her some things until I get her exactly where I want her. Yeah. And then it takes a turn.
I understand that. I'm just saying from the woman's perspective, it wasn't all just like bad things. It wasn't all red flags. There were some things that were actually decent behavior. It's just accompanied by these other, what turned out to be like literally he's a pathological liar. And when she met his family later and got some details from him about how much he lies, like his family had like pretty much cut ties with him. They had said they wanted some clarification. So she came back later and said that his parents had retired, the dad unretired to go back to work to pay for meds for him because he needed meds and had, mental health issues to the point where he needed meds, and they went back to work to pay for it. And both at the time when she met him, both his parents had died. He just lied about who and died when, which is weird. He'd said he was an arena football player.
He lied about what they did for a living.
Yep. He said they started a church.
Where he went to school, San Diego State, and then his dad, as a cop, paid the school to make him a private citizen, so he wasn't listed anywhere.
Yeah, that was. I'm like, that's a stretch. That you just know at that point, you're like, this man's a freaking liar, because that's not a thing. And she said she ignored some of the signs, and at one point she was pregnant, so that's when she agreed to get married, and she'd lost the baby before they got married. So she admitted she ignored those red flags because she wanted to be with somebody. And I think we've both been there, right? We've ignored red flags before. We talked about my 100%. Ski boy, and that was definitely some red flags I ignored. And so I know you've had some experience with this. So what do you want to share about that? Because I don't know what you want to share, like how much of it.
I mean, watching her and listening to her story was very triggering for me in some instances. I've been through a lot of what she's been through, but definitely not to that extreme. And it wasn't with just one person. And I want to say, like, I feel like I'm a pro at narcissism because I've dealt with it so much. But I will say this, I think everyone on this planet possesses traits and characteristics of a narcissist to some degree. I think some of the behaviors I feel like are just natural human behavior or a natural reaction to something like jealousy or possessiveness or whatever. I don't think that necessarily means you're a full-on narcissist. And I also don't think that a full-on narcissist possesses every single trait. I have dated, my ex-husband had very strong traits. He didn't possess all of them. but he had a lot of them, and things that he would do that this story reminded me of what, and this is Isabel's dad I'm talking about, was he would make up stories. He would almost take on the identity of I don't know who, and he would make up stories, and I would hear him tell other people stories, and I'm like, what? And when I met him, he told me he was never married, didn't have any kids, no criminal history. And so after we had gotten married and after we had Isabel, he had reached out to his dad. He was from Ohio. We were living in Georgia, which is funny because this is where this girl lives, in Georgia. And he had requested that his dad send him some boxes that he had at his house or whatever. So his dad sent him boxes. And while he was at work, being the amazing FBI agent that I am, started going through his stuff. And sure enough, I find out he has a criminal history, number one. He was married prior to me to a woman that lived in Georgia. And he also had 3 kids from 3 different mothers.
Wow.
And I found this out because all the paperwork was in there with his arrest records, his divorce decree, the child support documents for every child. So that part reminded me a lot of what I had gone through with him in that sense. And then he became very verbally abusive, and then he became physically abusive, and that's when I ended it. So in that situation, I got out of it pretty much right away. The one thing that surprised me but didn't surprise me was how long she stayed. And I was watching her talk about all of this, and I realized I did with my ex-boyfriend, my last very long relationship, kind of mimicked her in a lot of ways, as far as her staying for so long, even knowing he was lying. Like, she knew. And it almost became, and she even said, I just want to see what he comes up with next. I want to see how he gets out of this one. I want to see what excuse he comes up with. And I was doing the same thing with my ex-boyfriend, who I had found out had been cheating on me. Not only just cheating on me from the beginning, but he had been cheating on me with escorts. And this was not every once in a while. This was not once a month. This was more on a weekly basis for the entire 4 years that we were together.
Yeah.
And it took about a year before I found out. But I found out right after we had put a lease on a house together and blended our families.
Wow.
So at that point, I felt, oh my God, I'm stuck. I can't get out of this. So I chose to forgive him. And it continued. And it was one lie after another. And then, of course, once you find something like that out, it's checking the phone all the time and checking his whereabouts all the time and constantly questioning him. And the funny thing is that when we were living together, he would leave for work at 6:30 in the morning, and every day he would be home by 4:30 in the afternoon. And he never spent a night away from me, ever. So you think, how the hell is he doing this? Well, he was doing it during the day.
Say it's
during
happening
work
during
hours,
the daytime.
during the day.
Yeah.
He was going to those massage places with happy endings. And, at one point I started going through all the phone numbers in his phone. And I was Googling the phone number. Even if the phone number was listed in his phone under John, it wasn't really John.
Right.
It was Coco, the escort from such and such service.
Wow.
So there was probably 10 phone numbers in his phone under other names that was actually an escort. Then I created an AT&T account under his name so I could look at all the text messages. I mean, I wanted to be an FBI agent when I was growing up, and I would have been so good at it. So I found he was calling them at 7:00 in the morning.
Wow.
Right after kissing me goodbye, leaving for work. And then on his way home, he'd stop and get his happy ending. And that went on for years. And also, he would come home and I would be doing his laundry. And imagine living like this every day, that when you do laundry, I'm actually looking at his underwear to see if I see any leftovers.
Right.
Which was there all the time. And he had me so messed up in the head that I would see it, confront him, and by the end of the night, I was like, maybe I didn't see that.
So crazy.
Maybe I just imagined it. Like, that's narcissism. That's like gaslighting at its finest. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was nuts. And then finally, at the end of it, he had admitted to all of it. He said, it's not you. I'd rather, because he was a recovering addict. And
well, he wasn't recovered. He's not recovered from sexual addiction, because that's a sexual addiction. Like, let's be real.
So turns out, like, I had to start therapy and all that. He was also bipolar, and he was not medicated. And so after doing a bunch of research on people with bipolar that do not take medication, one of the things that they do, especially men, is risky sexual behavior is like one of the top things that happens. So it totally made sense. And also the therapist told me, because he was recovered from alcohol, because he was a recovering, pill addict, it was addiction transference. So it takes one, you exchange it for another addiction.
Yeah, it's why they tell when you go into like substance abuse rehab, they tell you not to get in a relationship right away, because it's that reason. It's transference. So you just transfer to the other person rather than you're trying to use the substance, right? Alcohol or drugs or whatever. The one thing they don't say to avoid, it seems, is cigarettes, which is interesting to me, but I guess you have your vices. Get rid of what you can, but I do think it's why it's a good idea to not go into a relationship, and to be very clear, it wasn't you. This was nothing to do with you.
Right. And it took me a long time to realize that. I mean, imagine what a blow that was to my ego.
Yeah.
And we actually had a very healthy sex life. And believe it or not, that man was, aside from that, he was perfect. He was affectionate. He was attentive. He was hardworking. He was, took care of himself physically. We had fun together. Our sex life was great. Like, it's like, if you could just keep it in your pants, we would have been great. And I mean, it got to a point actually where I even thought about, could I turn a blind eye to this? Could I actually stay with him knowing that this happens? Because he comes home to me every night. He treats me good. He cooks, he cleans, he grocery shops. We go on trips. I mean, everything else was amazing except for that.
So what was the moment? What was the moment when you determined you were like, I can't do it anymore? Because you said you thought about it.
It didn't take long for me to realize. I mean, maybe a day, and I was like, what the fuck? There is no way my kind of personality would be able to allow that.
So it was more passing thought.
It was a passing thought. Yeah. I mean, there was no way I could do it. No way. I would end up killing him, killing somebody. I would end up in jail. I don't know. And It wasn't good for my daughter.
Yeah.
We were living together. It wasn't good I didn't want to set that kind of example for her. If she ever found that out,
Right.
that this is okay. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy. And it took, that destroyed me. And then the aftermath was even worse. I had like a mental breakdown. Alcohol became an issue. That's how I coped with it. I gained a ton of weight. But I also got diagnosed with a rare heart condition at the same time. Like there was so much going on. So it took me a good 3 or 4 years to recover from that relationship and that breakup and everything that had happened, and for me to be able to trust anyone again. So this is the first time, the relationship I'm in now, where I have been able to really let my guard down. And it's been almost 6 years.
Wow. It's a long time.
Yeah.
It is interesting because her name is Risa. Is that right? Or Risa Tisa? I forget which way it is. Risa Tisa.
Risa Tisa.
That's her TikTok name. We'll put it in the show notes, but if somebody wants to go listen to the 8 hours like us. But that's a couple of things like that are related to what you said. Like one, he was her husband, how she got him out. He had hurt his knee and he was sleeping in the guest bedroom and he'd lost a bunch of weight. I don't know why that's on my brain, but she said he'd gone from like a 3XL to like an extra large or a large in a short period of time because he wasn't eating, because he was in so much pain from the knee. But I forget what it was that she'd found, like that I think she'd found the ex-wife and figured out that his stepdaughter hadn't died because he'd lied that he said he lost his stepdaughter. And there was something else. And she just was so mad. She said she went in there and basically just was like, you got to get out. You got to get out. And she was so mad. She was afraid she was going to hurt him. And this is not a violent woman, right? She does not seem like a violent woman whatsoever. And even to the,
right.
And that's kind of like partly to where you were saying that your ex had the escort issue. This guy had contacted prostitutes and escorts on Facebook, and she found that. You guys had some similar digging skills. Like she could have probably been an FBI agent too. But
oh yeah, she was good.
I know.
She was good. We could compare notes.
Really? You could compare notes. But
it reminded me so much of myself when she was doing what she was doing. I was like, wow, at least I'm not the only one.
Yeah. I'm sure you two aren't the only one. I'm sure you and I had a conversation with somebody else. I won't say who, but like she was telling us about her ex, and he took her to court. Like he wouldn't sell their mutual house. He let it go to foreclosure rather than sell it. Like that's just nasty. Like,
right.
I mean, they didn't have to do that. He was just being like literally to hurt her. He hurt himself because that was better. So that I don't understand that mentality, but it's so wackadoo to me that people think that like, oh, it's better to hurt both of us than to let her have anything, whatever.
Right. And it's so damaging to somebody. You know, she said several times in her story that, and I totally can sympathize with this because I remember the feeling. She said she cannot remember who she was before she met him. Mm. It changes you. I mean, being in a relationship like that for that long and having it be that severe changes everything about you, how you view life, how you view yourself, how you react to situations, and you come out of that relationship and that situation a completely different person than you were before. And it's not necessarily better. In most cases, it's a little worse. You're jaded, you're pissed, you're angry, you don't trust anybody. And it takes a long time to recover from all that and get yourself back.
How long were you guys together?
4 years almost.
Okay. And she was, I think from beginning to when she finally got the divorce from him, it was only like just over 18 months. Like around 18 months when because they got married 10 months after they met. So January, if I'm remembering her timeline right, it was January of 2021. And then she said they got married like they went to the courthouse because it was COVID So it was right after New Year's. And she said by January 21st, she knew she was in trouble because something had come up. Like, first of all, he stopped wanting to be intimate with her, like in 3 weeks, and they even had gone to counseling with a pastor and his wife. And the wife at one point shook her head and said, I don't think you guys are going to make it. And that was a pastor's wife, like,
Right. Believe it or not, though, the red flags, listening to her from an outsider, the red flags happened immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
For her, it was much later because it was over her head. She was ignoring them. And this is, like I told you earlier, to me, this is a cautionary tale for those that are meeting somebody, especially online. And I say that because just if there are, I know it's hard to not ignore the red flags because you're excited and you want this to be it and you want it to work. But 9 out of 10 times, if something feels off, it probably is. When I met my ex, the one I was just telling you about, we met online on Tinder. We went out, we had drinks, had a great time, and we had an immediate connection. We were inseparable from that moment on. Fast forward 3 months, we had been going out, drinking, hanging out, partying, like, in the honeymoon phase and having a great time. And fast forward 3 months, he sits me down to tell me that he is a recovering alcoholic and that he had fallen off the wagon on our first date. And so I was immediately felt very guilty that it was my fault. He fell off the wagon, and he said, well, most girls don't really want to be with a guy that doesn't drink at all. And that could also be a red flag if you tell them I don't drink, and which is a valid point. But he also told me I'm a recovering, pill addict. And I'm also living in a sober house.
And had been going out with you partying.
Right. The car I'm driving is my ex's. The boat I have is not really mine. It's my ex's. She bought for me. I'm supposed to give it back. I mean, all of these things. But here's the kicker. After 3 or 4 months, I was already in so deep and I was so invested and I was so in love that I'm like, well, I can't walk away now. Now I care about him, and now I want to fix him and save him. And so you have to be really careful. Like, I feel like he knew what he was doing. He didn't tell me until he knew that he had me right where he wanted me. And then he let that out. And luckily we were able to get past some of that. But, you just never know. You just never know what is happening when you meet people online. But even if you meet them in person. But
right. I was going to say, this is not only online. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this because I think you have a bias because of this. This is a bit of a history for you, so there's a bias there. And I'm not trying to say online's the end-all be-all. I don't think it is. I definitely think it's how a lot of people meet these days. But you could meet somebody in person and this could happen. Like, it's not only online.
It could totally happen. But, like, for example, when I met Mai, we met in public. I could already see what he was doing, his mannerisms, his personality, who he was hanging out with. Was he drinking? Was he fucked up on drugs? We were able to communicate and have a conversation for hours that night in person and get to know each other, organically that way. He couldn't hide behind a computer screen.
But I think that can happen online too. That's something I think for me, like, I want to meet them right away. Like, if they don't want to meet and just be text buddies, I'm out. Like, because that is a red flag a bit. Like, if you don't want to meet me, that's going to be the MO anyway. So that's not a fit. But you can be with somebody, and I think that's one thing I've learned is you have to spend time. Like, don't rush into anything because you need time to get to know this person, whether it's in person or from online. Like, time is your friend in getting to know who they truly are, because there's only so long somebody can hide that, right? There's only so long. If they really are trying to hide it, they cannot hide it. I think 90 days is kind of a good benchmark, because I just don't think, unless they're really, really crazy, have some mental health issues, that they're so good at it, I don't think most people are able to do it longer than that, because the cracks start to show, right? And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's just online. I don't. So that's where we'll agree to disagree.
I mean, of course it's not. I mean, I'm definitely not disagreeing with you on that. It can happen both ways. I am just saying that statistically, and it's just easier to hide behind a computer, and it's easier to lie on a computer. And I don't know. It's just different. I just think it's safer in so many ways to meet in person. But hey, I met my ex online on Tinder. Like I said, I've been there, done that, and we were together for 4 years. And even though I told you this horror story, it wasn't all bad. If it hadn't been for that, we'd probably be married right now. Everything else was great.
But both situations, both you and the story from TikTok, like, they lied in person. The lying happened. They weren't lying behind the computer. They were lying in person. Like, that's where most of the lying occurred. So that's all I'm saying is, it's not just online is a way to meet a person. You still have to suss out the rest of it after that. And that 100%, I will agree with you. That's where it comes in person. And do you have a valid point of seeing somebody out and about as the way of meeting them? Yes. It just isn't the way it seems to happen these days. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I know Sarah, last on one of our episodes, that's how she's been meeting people that she says works, but who knows? Other people have met online and are happy and together. So I guess my defensive position is, it doesn't always mean it's online. So we'll move on. I know we're going to just agree to disagree on this, which is fine.
The only thing I'm saying is, Sarah did comment that her most successful relationships have been the ones that she has met organically.
Yes. And I believe that's for reasons that we won't go into now. We can talk about later, and probably with Sarah on camera, because I have reasons that I think, but we won't go into that now. But my point is, online, in person, it doesn't matter. I think it's just trust your gut, because even now, if you met somebody, say it was not Mai, but somebody else that you met, and 3 months into it, they told you that they were a recovered alcoholic and have been partying with you for the last 3 months, and they were living in a sober house, you would at this point be like, yeah, I don't care how in love I feel. I'm going to put the brakes on and slow the roll. Whether you met them online or not, like, that's just a lesson you've learned from this past experience, that you're not going to stay in something longer because of what you've learned, right?
Right.
Because we take those lessons and apply them and grow. And my thing is, I don't ever want to become jaded. And I get it's very hard, because I can be jaded. I've had a guy kind of sort of stalk me, and it wasn't terrible like some of these stories, and he literally caused me issues. Like, I had to defend myself against a California bar because he lied to them about what he said I did, and it was bullshit. And he did it because I wouldn't have sex with them. And he texted me one night that his friend got them prostitutes and he was going to go sleep with a real woman. And I'm like, have at it, dude. Like, I'm out. Like, so there's a lot of crazy. And yes, I met him online, but like, there's crazies, but and I had a feeling that I'm like, there's something off. There's something off. And that's why I was like, I'm not ready. Like, you got to go slow, so 100% you have to listen to the gut. I think you've said it. I've ignored it. I know I ignored it with Ski Boy. I think you kind of had some of it with this guy a little bit in the beginning. Like, even though you said you were in so far, don't you think you kind of like thought about it a little when he was like, oh, I'm in a sober house and this isn't my car and this isn't my boat? Do you remember any of those thoughts around that? Like, this isn't quite right?
Of course. I mean, I'm sure I was like, okay, well, this is not ideal. This is not exactly what I pictured. but I was so in love at that point, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I would not do that now. It was definitely a lesson learned. Even that relationship was not a waste of time. I learned a lot about myself. I grew a lot from that. And now I know, now I'm more aware of more red flags and what to look for. And so, yeah, but I'm definitely not jaded by any means because I have dated several guys since then, and I haven't been able to move forward with them because they did not have, like, you had to knock me off my socks for me to really get to that point with you, and I just couldn't. This is the first time with my that I had been able to, like, wow, I let my guard down and I'm giving it 150% and it feels amazing. And I don't make him wear the black eye for anything that my ex did.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. You know, I've put that behind me. He's a new person.
That's great.
So we just have to hope for the best.
Yeah. So I prepared, Carolina, look, I have notes. Aren't you so impressed? So
yes,
I looked it up because one thing that I've asserted is that, okay, and it's funny because there was an article, it was on, I believe it was psychologytoday.com. And she wrote, she's like, everybody throws this around on social media. And there's even groups that are dedicated to like, I dated a narcissist, and like, there's a clinical term for it. So I know that not everybody's talking about it, but narcissistic personality disorder, and it can vary in how severe the disorder can be. But you've seen some of these and I think called them out, but like, they have an unreasonably high sense of self-importance and require constant excessive admiration. They feel they deserve special privileges and treatment. They expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements. They make achievements and talents seem bigger than they are. Preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, and or the perfect mate. And like in Risa T's story, that was this guy. He was a manager, and then he was going to be promoted to VP, and this was all this stuff he lied about. And it's true. Like
right.
he said, and he was a forklift operator. Like none of it was true. So that you saw that really clearly in her story. They believe they're superior to others and can only spend time with or be understood by equally special people. Critical of and look down on people they feel are not important. I mean, this goes on and on. They are envious of others and believe others envy them. They are behave in an arrogant way, brag a lot, and come across as conceited. Insist on having the best of everything, for instance, the best car or office. And then behaviors, especially if they can view it as criticism, like they might get impatient or angry if they don't get that recognition or special treatment. They have problems interacting with others and feel slighted, react with rage or contempt, and try to belittle other people to make themselves appear superior. And the thing that I really seem to notice with the ski boy, and I'm curious about your guy, I felt like he had a little bit, I don't think he was like a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. He had some traits. And I really think there was like a lack of self-worth there that he was hiding and has hidden for a long time. And that's one thing they say. They have secret feelings of insecurity, shame, humiliation, fear of being exposed as a failure. And I feel I saw that in that man. I'm curious about, is that something you saw in this guy, your ex?
Maybe a little, but from what you told me about, he was way more on that level than my guy was. My ex almost really didn't care what anybody thought about him. He just possessed other traits, but I also think that Ski Boy, you may not have been around long enough to have seen all of the traits.
I'm most so okay with that. Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus.
You like they told this woman, they kept telling this woman she dodged a bullet, and you definitely dodged a bullet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I have a pop quiz for you. Do you have any idea of what they say the actual percentage of the population is for true narcissistic personality disorder? Like it's a percentage and it's a range. And they say it's very consistent. It doesn't go up or down.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
For men and women combined?
Mm-hmm. It's just the population.
60%?
0 to 6.2% of the population has true narcissistic personality disorder.
That is an absolute lie.
But they're
There's
using
no
clinical
way.
terms. They're using it as a clinical term, so that's probably why. But that's where I'm saying the perception out there is that all these narcissistic people are running around. But if you're looking at, and again, this is looking at it from a clinical disorder, but it's not. A lot of people we have traits of it. Selfishness can be a trait of narcissistic personality disorder, like you were saying earlier. Those are human
Even
behaviors.
jealousy.
Right.
Jealousy could be. I mean, how many people are jealous and get jealous? I mean, of course, everybody has it to a certain degree, just like I think everybody has ADHD to a certain degree.
Well, certainly our phones have done that to us too. Social media.
Correct.
And the other thing they said, which is super interesting, they said that there are two types that have been identified of narcissism, and they're called grandiose and vulnerable narcissism. And there was a research article, it was published in 2021, that these researchers challenged that typing, and they suggest that only one true narcissism, and that's vulnerable narcissism. And they said that grandiose narcissism is actually a type of psychopathy, and that it means that true narcissists are that way with the vulnerable because they have used it to cope with insecurities. So that was very interesting to me. But again, I know this is clinical. It is
interesting.
It's just fascinating to me when they go into some of the clinical stuff because it's not, I'm sorry, it's just not what you go on Instagram or TikTok. It's not as many as people say. Do people have the behaviors? Do people behave badly? Of course. We all are human. We all have that. But it's not 60% of the population, and I'm picking on you because I didn't give you a heads up that I was asking you that. And you had no idea. You took a guess, right? But that's always been my thing, and like why even with Ski Boy in the beginning, I'm like, no, that's thrown around too much. There's no way it's that many people out in the world. So from a clinical perspective, it's low. I think from a human perspective, it's higher, not a clinical perspective. But I thought those were very interesting. And
it is interesting.
I kind of want to read more about vulnerable.
Yeah, I see narcissistic traits in almost everybody in my life.
Yeah.
Whether it might be 1, 5, 10, it all varies, but I see it. And even I can admit I possess narcissistic traits depending on the situation, the person, the circumstance. I mean...
But that doesn't make you a narcissist.
Right. I don't think I'm a narcissist. I just do possess some traits sometimes.
It's called human.
Exactly. That's what I was saying before. It's like natural human behavior.
And I think the message to me, and I think if, to women out there that are listening, our friends and people that are listening, the real bottom line is trust yourself. If something feels not right, trust yourself because we know, and it's also energy that's non-communicative, right? Non-verbal. Like there's energy being exchanged in body language, in behaviors, in just that little spidey sense, for lack of a better way of saying it, that something's not right here. Listen to that. And she knew it. I think you knew it. But you get in deep because we wanted to be that special person. You had fun with him and did things and liked him, and it's easy to get, attached to somebody and want to be with them. So I just say, take your time and trust your gut.
Yeah, 100%.
Do some research.
And we can I know we're running out of time, so we will have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
On narcissism and lying and everything else.
Yeah. What's your parting?
So we'll be back with that.
Word to somebody about it, though.
I would just say, listen to your friends, just like you did. And I'm using that as an example. Like you were not as familiar. You hadn't been really through that before, and I had. And so when you were telling me your stories, it was all sounding very familiar to me. And I was telling you from the beginning, like, this is not good. He's definitely a narcissist. And it took you a little bit, but you finally started catching on and figured it out. So if a friend is telling you something's off, listen and investigate and kind of just keep your ears and eyes open.
Yeah. And actually, that's a point I wanted to make about Risa Tisa's story. She didn't tell anybody what was going on behind the scenes. She said, I believe that what happens in a marriage should stay in the marriage. And I don't disagree with that. Like, I think that there's things that need to stay between the two people in the marriage. And at the same time, I still think that we need to have a trusted source outside that, like, I can say to you, hey, this is going on. Am I crazy? And you're like, no, you're not crazy. This is the feedback I'm seeing from a 10,000 foot view rather than in the forest. I can see the trees and I'm not just at the bottom of the forest, not seeing the whole picture. So I do think it doesn't have to be everybody, but I do think people need to have a trusted source that can be that voice of reason for you and to trust them. Like this woman didn't tell her mother or her aunties because she was embarrassed. And there's a point.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to call bullshit on the fact that what she said about, oh, because we're married, it should stay in the marriage. I do not believe that is the reason she didn't tell anybody. Yeah. I believe the reason why she didn't tell anybody was because she at first did not know what she was going to do. She didn't want to look stupid and dumb and be judged. And she didn't want people judging him. She didn't want to look like a failure. And I think it was more those reasons, because the same thing with me. Nobody knew. I put my ex on a pedestal to everybody, knowing what he was doing to me. Nobody knew until the very end.
Wow.
And my mom didn't know until after we broke up. And I did that because I didn't want to look like an idiot. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want people judging him because what if I ended up staying with him? Then they were going to hate him, and I didn't want that. So many things go through your mind. So, yeah.
Yeah. I again, that's just where and I get nobody wants to look like a fool. And we've all been fools in relationships. Like, I don't care if you've been in a relationship, you've probably been a fool. I heard somebody online the other day, they said love, the best way to describe love is giving somebody the power to hurt you and trusting that they won't. And I was like, that's really powerful.
Wow. Right? I like that.
I know, right? Because I
think that's what I'm doing with Mai. That is exactly what I'm doing right now. And I think you're probably there as well.
I don't know. Look, I'm just in the present. I'm dating somebody. So far we've had a great time together, but it's still really new. And that is hard for me. That's hard for me, but it's very new. And we've been on 4 dates and everyone has just been so much fun. I think he's a great guy so far. I've done a little internet sleuthing and everything shows as what he's told me. So, but it's early. And that is the hard thing that I'm learning right now is to give it that time. And I'm dating. I'm not exclusive with him. Does that mean I've been on other dates with people? Actually, no, not since we've started, but it doesn't mean I won't. So, but, I'm learning the time.
So
I'm learning the time thing. So we'll see. But he's busy. He's got kids in baseball and he works a lot, but he's Mr. Baseball Dad. That's his name, Baseball Dad.
Can you see my daughter?
I do. Hi, Izzy.
In the background.
All right. Well, I think we're good. We're going to definitely do a part 2 on this and probably maybe bring in a guest or something. Maybe we bring in somebody with a counseling or psychology. What's up, pretty girl?
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Alrighty, well, we're going to wrap up this episode, so we will see you. We're going to be back. I don't know what our next episode is because we haven't come up with a topic yet. So we'll be back with another episode next time from your Sweet and Spicy podcast, girls. So
stay tuned.